Here's a true story, a most unfortunate true story, but it happened, so we have to tell about it. Called Spring Cleanup. It was spring in the valley and time to clean up at the grange we belonged to when I was a pup. To elucidate some, just in case you don't know, the old grange was a power in our land long ago. 'Twas composed all of farmers, their kids, and their wives, and it brought some society into their lives, at the same time providing a place where they'd meet to discuss farmers' co-ops and cattle and wheat. Well, the day of spring cleanup arrived with a flare, and a busy good humor pervaded the air. While the women worked inside, as custom was then, all the yard work and such was performed by the men. Now, not only good humor pervaded the air, 'cause a sturdy old backhouse provided its share. As a couple of sniffs from the leeward side proved, there was no other option, she had to be moved. So my dad called some fellers to come to his aid, and they formed themselves into an outhouse brigade. There was Dad and my brother and Earl and Ray. They are called Privy Council to this very day. Well, they held a short conference. Then they stood back and decided upon a good plan of attack. They all knew that they needed to dig a new hole, and to move the thing over would be the next goal. So they found them some poles to put under each side, and they surveyed their handiwork, not without pride, thinking, once we have dug a new hole in the ground, we're going to lift on the poles and just shift her around. So they started to dig, and the stories began, as can happen when men start to talk man to man. Each in turn would stretch out what he knew was the truth, and they outdid each other in being uncouth. So in words of one syllable, each took a turn to tell all of the stories that he'd come to learn about crappers and related stuff of that kind, using all of the short words that came into mind. So they carried on that way while digging the pit that would lodge the outhouse when moved over a bit. What they didn't know then, but they learned later on, was that poor Mrs. Duncan was trapped in the John. Mrs. Duncan's a model of morality, and she's also as fat as a farm wife can be. She had gone to the outhouse to get some relief, and she'd sat there embarrassed beyond all belief. She had never heard language of that kind before, and there's no way she wanted to hear any more. But the men were still scurrying round and about, and there wasn't a graceful way she could get out. Well, the hole is all dug, and it's now time to lift. So each man grabs a pole, and they started to shift the old outhouse from where it always had stood, and each one of them lifted more weight than he could. They were lifting and tugging, their muscles a twitch, when Ray loudly announced, "She's a heavy old bitch." Well, with that, Mrs. Duncan dismounted and fled, and the men stood aghast at the things they had said. But 'twas Ray, most of all, who was counting his sins, as his jaw slackened up and fell down toward his shins, and indeed a bleak future it was that he saw, as he mumbled, "My God, it's my mother-in-law." Yeah, that was a sad story. Let's take a moment off here, shall we?